First, Representative Nunes, let me just start with this vote and more importantly, the idea of a national emergency. What are your thoughts and where do you stand on this?
Well, I actually agree with your panel. I was standing here listening to the panel. I think we need to have everything on the table. We need to deal with DACA. We need to have a work permit system. That's really what we should be doing, but the Democrats in the House haven't wanted to come to the table. So, you know, they promised that they were going to take care of immigration. This is the obvious time to take care of the DACA kids, but they're not willing to even put something on the table. So, you know, what we're left with is barely starting the wall, but a true solution is real border security with a real worker permit system and dealing with the people that are here. That's what the American people should expect from us.
That goes without saying, I think, at this point, and yet that's not what's being delivered from Washington, D.C., and it's been a very long period of time. President Trump now, perhaps, according to sources, ready to use a national emergency. Sarah Sanders saying that they're very prepared for legal challenges. Where do you stand with respect to that? Because I know within the Republican Party, some think that this could be a dangerous path to go down. It can open a Pandora's box.
Well, it is a dangerous path, but the path has already been down by President Obama numerous times. So I really support this idea because I think we have to have legal challenges so that we can show the American people whether the courts are going to only side with Democrats and Democratic presidents or the court's going to be fair. There's definitely in the law that this is an emergency on the border. The president has the powers to do it. Where if you take with President Obama, even though I'm the person who actually wants to deal with the DACA kids, I think they need to be dealt with in a humane way. But President Obama didn't have the legal authority to give these people status, and that's still being fought over in the courts. So I think it's a good idea because we're paying the price for an administration that went really awry over the last 8 years before Donald Trump became president.
Representative Nunes, let me change directions here a little bit because there's a lot of fallout of the 60 Minutes interview coming up with Andrew McCabe, also promoting his new book, The Threat, How the FBI Protects America in the Age of Terror and Trump. And the most explosive thing so far, an admission of sorts of a potential, for lack of a better word, coup against President Trump. I mean, what do you make of that?
Well, I actually had not heard the name of the book until you just said it. It's interesting they talk about in the age of terror. What I think most Republicans agree with that, but the terror came from the FBI and Department of Justice, who used a document, dirt, dug up by the Clinton campaign to start an investigation. And then including, I mean, if you've seen some of the interviews or read the excerpts, he even talked about the steps that he took to ensure that the investigation would continue. We know from, I've looked at all of this over the last 2 years, we know for a fact the FBI knew at the time of the appointment of the special counsel from the lead investigators that there was no there, meaning that they had nothing on Trump, they had no collusion, they never did. Why? Because it was propaganda from the Russians given to the Clinton campaign, picked up by our FBI. It's an embarrassment and it is a terror, and they did try to attempt a coup. And it should never have been done, and this needs to be righted. It's a wrong that needs to be righted.
It's shocking. I mean, we have to really sit down and pause for a moment. And I think we get hit with so much news, and it changes every 24 hours that we just let things go. But the idea that the FBI was doing a nose count to see maybe how many members of the cabinet, they needed 8, would be okay with the 25th Amendment to take away the presidency, to overturn essentially the vote of the American people, ostensibly because they thought he would pull the plug on a Russian investigation. It's so far-fetched, and yet this is real life. This was happening. How is this happening in this country right now?
Not only did it really happen, Charles, but they cast a net so wide without any real evidence on anyone. The only evidence they had was this dossier that the Clinton campaign paid for that came from Russians. And the irony in all this, and I know I can't say it enough times, the very thing that they were investigating the Trump campaign for, which was supposedly getting dirt from Russians to use against Hillary Clinton, that's exactly what the Clinton campaign did. And so, you know, I hope that the new AG gets in there and he starts to clean house, and so that we can start to put the Department of Justice and the FBI back together again.
Sir, I want you to take a listen, along with the audience, to what Senator Graham had to say earlier today.
We're definitely going to speak to Andrew McCabe and the whole crowd about what happened during the 2016 election.
A lot of people believe that Andrew McCabe should be facing justice himself. Of course, he was fired the day before his retirement for lack of candor, which is a euphemism for lying. What are your thoughts on bringing Andrew McCabe back to Capitol Hill and digging further into this, and maybe where he should he be facing some legal challenges himself?
Well, all of them that were involved in the development of the FISA, okay, so this was the secret warrant that went after the Trump campaign, everybody who was behind that should be held accountable. You know, whether it was a conspiracy or not, whether it was abuse of power, I don't know, but they should be held accountable. The court, the FISA court, should hold them accountable also. The FISA court should step in. They could all lose their law licenses or be charged with lying to the court or misleading the court. Those are the types of things that need to happen if we're going to keep this process, this FISA process, which is designed to target terrorists, to target bad guys. The American people need to understand that system that's supposed to target really bad terrorists and foreigners was used against a political campaign. That's where this all went wrong, and somebody's got to fix it, because every day that goes by that it's not fixed, there's fewer and fewer Republicans who will support the continuation of these programs, which are extremely important to protecting Americans.
Sir, we have a statement, a joint statement that's just come in on the possibility of President Trump declaring a national emergency. It's from Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer and Speaker Nancy Pelosi. I want to share it with you. It's a joint statement. Quote, declaring a national emergency would be a lawless act, a gross abuse of power of the presidency, and a desperate attempt to distract from the fact that President Trump broke his core promise to have Mexico pay for his wall. And it's yet another demonstration of President Trump's naked contempt for the rule of law. This is not an emergency, and the president's fear-mongering does not make it one. He couldn't convince Mexico, the American people, or their elected representatives to pay for his ineffective and expensive wall. So now he's trying an end run around Congress in a desperate attempt to put taxpayers on the hook for it. The Congress will defend our constitutional authorities. Your thoughts?
Well, for those people to talk about lawlessness after President Obama set a record for executive orders and executive actions without any authority is hysterical. So they probably just ought to look in the mirror, because normally whatever they accuse you of doing, they're actually doing themselves. Like I said earlier, I think this is an important step to take, because this needs to get into the courts, because we need to deal with all of the executive actions that have taken place over the last decade or so.
Are you confident that that will happen? I mean, we're looking at an American public who's really skeptical. We've seen hearing after hearing after hearing after hearing, and it just goes on from one administration to another. And it feels like this notion of some form of justice, some form of clarity, some finality to all of it remains very elusive.
It does, and it's like we started out with, Charles. This is really sad that we cannot get bipartisan cooperation in this town to solve the problem with immigration. Remember, Republicans got about 180 votes last year in the House. We need 218, we only got 180. But that was for DACA, it was for building the wall, it was for border security. It was a great piece of legislation. Not one Democrat voted for it. Here they've promised all these DACA kids that they're going to take care of the DACA kids. The president reached out to them, gave them an olive branch to have some type of comprehensive immigration reform, and they haven't done it. So, and then they sit there, I mean, first time I heard the statement, you just read it, but to sit there and complain about lawlessness, I mean, give me a break.
Right. Representative Nunes, thank you very, very much.